An entitled Karen tries to force me to move my car from in front of her house, claiming that I'm not allowed to park on this public street and that she's gonna call the police and have my car towed if I don't move it. And I'm honestly still blown away by this entitled Karen and her awful attitude. Here's what happened. Okay, so this happened a few years ago, but I was really inspired to share this, so here we go. I came to my wife's parents' house back when we were just dating for a party. All the space in front of their house was taken up by other people at the party, so I went to turn around to park on the other side of the street directly across from their house. While I was backing up, I noticed an old lady checking her mail and mean-mugging me like I was an East Coast rapper driving on Crenshaw Boulevard in the 90s. She starts slowly walking across the street as I pull forward, so I have to stop and wait for her with my car completely blocking the street. Instead of going home, she starts picking at tiny weeds growing by the curb in front of her house, which is right where I'm about to park. I think to myself, okay, weird, but she doesn't know I'm trying to park there, so I'll just wait. She starts looking at me suspiciously after a few seconds because my car is only a few feet away from her. I realize I should probably clarify my intentions because it does look weird for me to be just hovering there and I need to clear the street. I roll down my window and I say, I'm actually gonna park there, and she says that she's cleaning her driveway. I try and clarify that I'm not parking in front of her driveway, but she continues to slowly pick at things and says that I can't do that because she's cleaning. I realize she's full of garbage and I say to her, so you went to get the mail and just now decided to start cleaning with your mail in your hands as you saw me trying to park there? And when I ask that, she replies by saying yes. Now, I have zero patience for people who don't respect other people's time and want everyone to revolve their lives around them. I back up a bit more and I drive around her, parking in the spot to the left of her driveway. I knew we were about to have a ridiculous interaction, but I was in a great mood, so I was prepared to be as much of a sarcastic jerk as possible. This entitled Karen looks at me and says, you can't park there. But I respond by saying, yes I can. She then says to me that I can't do that because this is her house. So I look at her and I say, no, that's your house. And I point at her house literally behind her. I then motion to the street as theatrically as possible, saying to her that this is a public street. This entitled Karen says, you're going to that party at their house, aren't you? They always have parties and a bunch of people park all over the street. I respond to her by saying, well, yes, that's what streets are for. They're meant for parking. Very astute observation, ma'am. This conversation is happening while I'm gathering things from my car to take inside, and I'm purposefully not giving her my undivided attention because I want her to know she doesn't deserve it, which clearly adds to her frustration. She says to me, if you're coming to their house, you should park in front of their house. I look at her and I say, lady, you can clearly see all the space in front of their house is already taken up by other cars. Their garage is full, their driveway's full, and there's even a car parked and blocking the driveway. My options are exhausted, so I must park in front of someone else's house, which by the way is not a problem since this is a public street and I'm allowed to park anywhere I want as long as it's not blocking a driveway, mailbox, or a fire hydrant. Now this logical and concise explanation put her in a dead end. So she did what every Karen does when they're out of line and not getting their way. It was now time for threats and insults. She looks at me and says, you're not very smart, are you? I respond by laughing and I say, actually, I'm very smart. I'm a nuclear physicist. In fact, I split the atom yesterday. Now, as a side note, I'm not and I didn't, but at this point, I'm just having fun. The Karen responds by saying, you're not smart. You don't listen to what you're told. I say to her, ma'am, unquestioning obedience is for dogs. Clearly, I'm not a dog, but a smart scientist who splits atoms. She then says to me that she's gonna have my car towed, and I say to her, go ahead and try. Call up a tow truck and tell them there's a car parked legally that needs to be towed. See how that works out for you. Well, this Karen then calls me stupid and says that she's gonna call the police. And that's exactly where our conversation ends. I tell her I would love for her to do that, and when the police come, tell them to come find me. She knows which house I'm gonna be at. And trust me, it was an absolute joy to watch her get her day ruined simply because I wouldn't obey her ridiculous whims. Her driveway was empty, nobody was coming to her house, she didn't need the space, and she was just bored out of her mind and basically upset that other people exist. I came in and told this story to my girlfriend and her brother, and they just started laughing and told me how much of a pain in the neck she's been throughout the years, constantly nagging and complaining about nothing, yelling at people and calling the police on little girls who play in front of their house, and that's because the sound of happy children fills her cold, bitter heart with hate. Now, I typically don't like upsetting people, but honestly, in this case, I seriously felt a lot of joy. Wow, that Karen seriously is so bored that she has to go out and bother people parking in front of her her house. Like, does she really think she owns the whole street? Like, does she think nobody can ever park in front of her house ever? Like, I'm sorry, Karen, but this is not some kind of like private drive where you get to dictate who can and can't park there. It's a public street and anyone can do what they want. But honestly, I love the way this original poster put this Karen in their place, because this lady's attitude was so disgusting, and she had no right to try and treat anybody this way. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My entitled Karen of a neighbor knocks on my door whenever she wants, constantly disturbing my peace, as well as crossing my boundaries as she demands just about everything from me. And I'm honestly getting so annoyed by the situation that I now don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I moved into the absolute best apartment situation I have ever been in. It's basically a house split into 2 apartments, and it's fully renovated on the inside. It is a decent neighborhood, and it's even within walking distance of downtown. Now, I have a neighbor who's a nice old lady. She's probably lonely, and she was just excited to finally have a neighbor, because apparently the last one stole her mail, and things were fine for a while, and we would talk every now and then, but after a week or two, it became clear she thinks it's appropriate to either grab me going in or out, or banging on my door for an immediate emergent response. She also seems to always wear nothing but a robe, so she grabs me when I try to converse, but it's always too cold to talk, even though she refuses to stay inside or just call me or text me. The first time she banged on my door was because I put the trash in the wrong place on the curb, and she was trying to help me out. And at one point, she bangs on my door that my friend had to move her car because someone had to park near the door in her spot. So I thought it made sense for me to say, feel free to call or text if someone needs the spot, or if you need anything else. Now, I stupidly thought that this would resolve the intrusions, but it definitely didn't. I come out to my car and she grabs me and says, "Oh, I didn't know you were home. I couldn't hear you at all." This then leads to a conversation about the snowplow people coming and how I need to find somewhere else in the street to park. I try to ask her where to park, and she says, "Oh, I'm in my robe. I can't talk right now." So I just leave. 2 days later, she violently bangs on my door. She simply has to get to the pharmacy as they won't deliver, and she wants to know if I can bring her there at any point during the day. Now, sensing the boundary crossing is getting dangerous, I immediately say no. She starts to talk and I try to talk back, but she just says, "Oh, it's too cold. I'm in my robe." So I say, "Okay, call me on the phone then." She says, "But I'm on the phone with the pharmacy." And I say, "Well, I'm sorry, but I can't help you." I then go drive somewhere and I just try to calm down, and I texted her that I'm happy to help out if she would just call me in advance, and that I understand that you can't speak in your robe, especially when it's cold outside, so please feel free to call or text me and we can set up a plan. She then apologized and I gave her advice about the pharmacy. But today, I think she's sneakily trying to break down the boundary. She bangs on my door unannounced and she says, "Oh, it's warm out, so I'm okay in my robe. And this isn't about me going anywhere. I have some food I don't want. Would you like it?" And when she said that, I'm honestly just scratching my head, as I'm seriously unsure of her intentions or if she's trying to break another one of my boundaries. Yeah, I really think she's trying to like sneak her way back into your life, and it seems like she's trying to like establish this pattern where she can knock on your door and you're definitely gonna answer. Like, in my opinion, I don't mind having neighbors who are friendly and cordial, but if they start banging on my door at all hours demanding to talk to me, as well as making weird requests of me, then that in my opinion would be way too far. Like, why don't you mind your business and I'm gonna mind my business, and then the both of us will be happy living in our situation. So in my opinion, I think it's time to just set some serious boundaries and tell her straight up that no, you can't just bang on my door whenever you want. And I also think it was probably a really bad idea to give out your phone number, especially in retrospect, but I think you did it in good faith and you thought that maybe your neighbor was normal, but it is just really unfortunate that you find out the hard way that no, she's kind of crazy. So hopefully you're able to put up some kind of boundary with this lady, because this Karen sounds absolutely obnoxious to have to live next to. Am I the jerk for building houses for some family members to live on my land, but not allowing my parents the same privilege? Because right now, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, my sister and I have a 21-year age gap. She is much older than me. She had a different upbringing from me, even though the same parents raised us. My sister was brought up in a typical household when my parents were substance-free, and she was raised when they were great and loving parents. I found out that 2 years before I was born, my parents went to a party one night and decided to try some substances, and they've been reliant on them ever since. And when I was 3 years old, Child Protective Services removed me from their care. My aunts from my mom's side didn't want me to go grow into care, so they took me in. They split custody between them as they were in a low-income family, and my aunts made a lot of sacrifices to keep me fed, clothed, and warm. I found out later in life that I was removed from my parents' care because of neglect and awful stuff going on in the house. I don't see my parents as my parents, and I have absolutely no sympathy for them, and I don't want to amend our relationship. I see my aunts as my parents, even though they're sisters. I'm doing well now, and I have a job and a family, and I earn a good income. And 2 years ago, I decided to purchase land to transform into my dream farm when I retired. A year ago, I decided I wanted to build houses around the land. Also, my family could be close to me. I've hired contractors to build houses for my 2 aunts and their families, as well as one for my sister and her family and a home for me. The houses will be in their names and mortgage free. Now, this is why I need some judgment from the internet, just to figure out if I'm a jerk or not. I don't want a relationship with my parents, and I wrote them each a letter explaining why. And I also mentioned some therapy I did to heal my past so that I could move on. I feel that if I tried to build my relationship with my parents again, I would just be stuck in the past. And this is something my mental health could not handle. My parents are trying their hardest to rebuild the relationship with me, and I've asked family members to respect my wishes, but they're still trying to find ways to contact me. Well, my parents discovered that I bought some land and I built some houses for family members to live on. They've written me a letter saying they're disappointed that I'm not building one for them and saying I should be there to look after them. Mind you, my parents have no savings at all, and some of the family are on the fence about this. Some think that I should build them a house mortgage-free, as it would make their income a lot better since they would not have to rent. But other people are on my side when I don't want to do that. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? I'm sorry, but anyone calling you a jerk is completely foolish. Like, if I was in your shoes, I would be doing the exact same thing. Like, no, of course you're not the jerk. Your parents gave up on you a long time ago, and you got removed from that house to try and protect you as a child. Like, they played no role in you being raised at all, and if anything, they were terrible parents. It doesn't matter what they were before you were born. What does matter, in my opinion, is the way they treated you when you were born. Like, they gave up on being good parents the second they took those substances. And I just don't think you should be responsible for people and be expected to take care of people who never took care of you. So no, I don't think you're the jerk for saying, nope, I'm not letting you in one of these houses, because based on their track record, I would question if they would even do that to you if the roles were reversed, because based on what you've described, I am not convinced that they would care in the slightest. Am I the jerk for not paying back my sister $300 that she loaned to me after she kicked me out of her house with nowhere to go? Here's what happened. I'm a 21-year-old female, and I currently live with my middle sister who's 30 years old after my oldest sister's house was currently being sold. Before moving in, I talked to my middle sister about any bills, and she told me not to worry about anything and that I wouldn't be paying for anything and to just focus on my tattooing. At the time, I was an apprentice at a tattoo shop. I was not tattooing at the moment, but would still gain tips from my coworkers. Even though she said I wouldn't be paying any bills, I still gave her a bit of money that I had to help with something, such as groceries or any bills that she might not mention, or I would buy her and her kids food when they couldn't afford it. I truly was grateful that my sister took care of me and that I had no bills, but I did my very best on taking care of things for her, such as picking up the kids from school, cleaning the apartment while she worked, and making dinner before she got home. I saved up enough money to buy a small used car, and me and her went to get it registered, and the tags were expired, so I had to pay a $300 fee. I didn't have the money on me at the moment, but my sister looked at me and said, I will take care of it. She didn't mention anything about paying her back, so I assumed that she was helping me out. Everything was going smoothly until she started going through some things with her husband and eventually started taking them out on me. She started demanding money from me every night before bed, saying things like, if you don't pay me, I will throw all your belongings outside and you'll need to find somewhere else to go because I don't want you here anymore. Every night she threatened to kick me out and I would just start crying. Some comments were even stuff like, you're not even my family. I don't care about you. I only care about my kids. She told me I had a specific date to be out by, and if I wasn't gone, she was gonna start throwing everything out the door. I got tired one day, and after she left for work, I just packed my things and I left. I didn't know where to go, but I just started driving. My older sister called me and I filled her in on everything. My older sister scolded my sister for what she did, and to that, my middle sister actually said, well, I didn't think she would actually leave. I haven't spoken or seen my middle sister in almost a year, and to this day, she still sends me a message asking me for the $300 that she helped pay for. So honestly, am I the jerk for not paying her back? Because at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, so personally, I do think you need to pay back that $300, but the way your sister was acting towards the tail end of you living there was absolutely insane. Like grade A crazy. There's no reason to act like that. And I know for a fact if I was in your shoes, I would never put up with that for another second. Now, you could go about paying her back the $300 she paid for the tags or whatever you want to do, but in my opinion, I think you just need to go about this really carefully, because clearly this lady is just straight up toxic. If you let her back in your life, I think there's a really good chance she could try to disrupt any kind of peace that you've gained in your life, and I really think you don't want that in the slightest. Also, this is a really good reason why you need stuff in writing when you're living with someone, because word of mouth of them basically being like, oh yeah, you don't have to pay for anything, and then they just turn around and they're like, oh, I want all that money back for the car tags, or any other thing that they might be like asking money for, in my opinion, just proves that yeah, you need stuff in writing to try and like defend yourself if things go south. And it's not like you don't trust them by having something in writing, it just makes everything a little more clear in the long run, despite the fact that the original poster said that they only lived there for about 4 months. So no, I don't think you're the jerk for kicking her out of your life, but also I don't think it would be a bad idea to start paying back that $300 even if it's in small increments, because that way at the bare minimum, you can be away from this lady pretty much for good. Because I know if I was in your shoes, this is probably the last person I would ever want to have any kind of debt towards, because based on the way she's acting, I guarantee you she's gonna hold this over your head pretty much for the rest of your life. Am I the jerk for getting my friend a place to live, only to then have her block me and never talk to me again? Because right now I feel really bad, and at this point I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so in January, my landlord raised my rent by about $400 a month, so I decided to move out. A little bit after this, before I started looking for places, I saw a Facebook post by a casual friend who we will call Steph, that's not her real name, and her partner and their 2-year-old were looking for a 3-bedroom place. My old place had 3 bedrooms, so I messaged them and I suggested they move into my place when I moved out. At the time, they were staying with the dad of another friend and had greatly overstayed their welcome. Steph and her partner had applied for social housing and had been rejected, and were finding it too hard and too scary to do rental applications and inspections. They also didn't make great applicants, as neither of them had jobs that you could put on paper or documented rental history. It was hard for them to travel with their kids as they didn't have a car, and as such they didn't want to do a physical inspection before applying. I did a video tour for them and they were happy with that. I also ended up just doing the rental application entirely myself for them. I also was a reference for them, and I lent them the entire bond amount of over $2,000, as it turns out they didn't have enough money at the time. The loan was on the condition they would pay me back within 2 weeks and I wouldn't have to chase them for it. Fast forward and I moved out into a better place. I spent 2 days cleaning my old place up for them, and I even went as far as paying a friend to help me out when it comes to cleaning. And I got the whole place steam cleaned and deodorized, as I do have 2 cats. They moved in, they seemed happy, and it was all going well. Yesterday I messaged Steph checking in, and it turns out they had a few issues with the dishwasher that I bought, as it was having some leaking issues, which I did warn them about, and the downstairs toilet was flooding and getting all over the carpets. Today I remembered they still owed me over $300, and it had been a month since the last payment. I messaged Steph again asking for an update for the repayment, and was told that due to having lots of issues, like black mold on the carpets, not being allowed to shower because of the toilet plumbing issue, and a cat smell coming from the heating vents when they used it that burned their eyes, she simply was not able to make any kind of payments. I told them that I didn't know about the mold or the heating vent smell, and that I had never had any of those issues when I lived there. She then accused me of drawing dirty drawings in the dirt on the master bedroom door. Well, I got my full bond back, and the real estate agent never mentioned any of these issues. I told them that I was sorry to hear that, and I asked them again when I could have my money back. The conversation ended fine, and then when I came back, I find out that she blocked me. And this just really sucks, as she's my friend and I was trying to help her out. So honestly, am I the jerk for setting them up with such a terrible place and a year-long lease? I mean, it was fine when I lived there, even though it was very clearly cheap, because at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. First of all, no, you are definitely not the jerk. For starters, you were going to move out of that place as it is anyways. You literally were not going to live there, and you were doing Steph a big favor by saying, hey, you want to move into my place? And you have it right. That place was just fine when you were living there. You had no issues with any kind of plumbing or any kind of leaks, and you definitely didn't have a weird cat smell coming out of the vents. Although that might be a case where maybe you just didn't smell it because you were used to having cats around all the time. But even if that is the case, like seriously, all the things that they're describing are brand brand new issues that you definitely had no part of. Like seriously, it's not your fault that there's black mold or that the toilet flooded. Like that's on the apartment complex itself. They should have done more research on their end and seen if this is something that they wanted to be a part of. And sure, you did act in good faith in filling out all the applications and helping them out, even going as far as loaning them money when, in my opinion, you definitely didn't need to do that. If they're unhappy with their place, that's on them for not doing more research. But also, this might be a case where Steph just complains about everything and nothing she's ever given is ever good enough in her opinion. Like you never had black mold in the apartment. I'm sure you would have said something about that. So I'm personally questioning if there is any black mold like in the first place. So no, you're not the jerk. It sounds like your friends are like really not that nice, and it really sounds like they use you to try and get a place to live. And honestly, you do not deserve that in the slightest. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.